Hey guys, how's it going? Preparing here. So I know a lot of you guys watch the racing streams, and you guys have seen me race and all the good stuff. And when it comes to like 1 week races or prolonged races, such as 2 weeks, a month, these have happened in the past and they'll continue to happen in the future. They kind of demonstrate, in general, the most efficient leveling strategy for a new character. And because of that, I kind of want to guide you guys so you guys can understand what people do, why they do it, and how it will change when there's only going to be 3 difficulties but 3 acts once open beta is released. So over here I have the little map thing with the quests and all that, and pretty much what people do is they just run through the game. They just play through the game through normal. You don't have to do anything special. If you do end up killing like every single mob you come across, you'll actually be over leveled for the zone. While you can do that, it's not particularly efficient. There's no penalty to experience, but if you're for instance, a level 17 player in Caverns of Wrath, per kill as a percentage of your X bar, you would gain less experience than if you were like 14 or 15, even though the numerical amount of experience is the same. And then when you'd be like 17, you'd expect to be maybe in river crossing, so you'd gain like a bigger portion of experience. So what people do is they just kind of play through the game. When it comes to options, like in Act 2, you can go left or right. I like to go right all the way, but without doing sins. Then I go left all the way. Then I do the harder stuff. You kind of want to match the level of the zone, but there's always going to be one that's maybe a few levels higher or lower, depending on how many mobs you kill out of the zone. So like I said, you can kill all of them if you want, but if you kill only the bigger packs, only the things that follow you, and you're kind of directed to the objective of the quest, you'll kind of be maybe a level or 2 under the zone, which is kind of where I want to be. If you do this as a group, it's a lot easier, so you can get away with this, and have a large, you'll be very safe. If you have a lot of people, you're not really in too much trouble. So that's what you do. You just play through the game. The levels pretty much keep up with you all the way through Cruel, through Ruthless, and Ruthless, and if you're in Merciless, I think at Act 1 it still keeps up, but maybe you're a little bit further behind. When you start hitting Act 2, if you play through the game all the way through, what I have noticed is that I tend to beat the final boss at around level 53. So that's a little bit too low in my opinion, because that's when you start facing the difficult content. So right now in the closed beta version of the game, the difficult content starts to happen around Waterfall Cave, Ancient Pyramid, and Vol Oversoul boss in Act 2 is very difficult if you just run through the game and try to get to him. So what people do is, what people like me do is, we find an exp farming spot and we get geared up. So why is this important? Well, I like to choose Church Dungeon. I go to Church Dungeon and then I farm the Fell Shrine. Fell Shrine is a really good zone because it's end to end. So what you do is you follow the road. Let me turn on phase run. You follow the road from that spawn point all the way to the end on Crossroads, and you can zone out here, create a new instance, and you can zone out on the other end to create a new instance. So it's pretty cool because of that, and because of the fact that every single mob in here runs very slowly. So you're really never going to get overwhelmed unless you make a mistake. What other people like to choose is they like to choose Western Forest. Western Forest also has an end-to-end of the road, but the mobs move a lot faster. There's a lot more archers. They have poison arrow. So for some builds, in fact I believe for most builds, the risk of dying is a lot higher. And because Western Forest is 54 and Fell Shrine is 54, I like to pick Fell Shrine, but it doesn't really matter. I like to farm Fell Shrine up until the XP penalty becomes a little too severe. You can do this up until 65, in which I think you're getting like 25% of the XP, so it's kind of bad. And you can also go to Waterfall Cave and farm the cave portion of Waterfall Cave 2. It's also end-to-end, it's a shorter run, so you have to do a lot more to level, but it is pretty efficient. The goal of doing this essentially is to get wealth that you will need to complete the game, and have an easier time doing it. So what I mean by that is, when you're doing these zones, because you've kind of rushed to the end game, not really the end game, but close enough to it, when you farm these zones, you're actually going to be able to get some items that are going to last you throughout your character for the next 20, 30, or in some cases, indefinite amount of levels. Basically what you want to do is, as you go through the zones, as you level up, prior to this stuff, you're going to accumulate a few like orbs of fusings, all this kind of stuff. But when you want gear for your skills, typically you're using very crappy gear. So, for instance, I only have largely good gear, but these gloves are, on the mediocre side of good. And the most important thing is that I have this arrangement of links. So when you go through the game, you'll find stuff like this, but it'll be on shitty gear, or it'll be on white items, and you don't really want to invest too much currency into making them into good items. So you just use it for the links. But when you come to endgame gear, when you start doing maps, you're also going to see a large influx of items. And you can't really fuse every single one. You can't really use jewelers on every single one to get 4 link, to get 5 link, to get 3 link, all that stuff. You can't really do that because you run out of those currencies. So fusings, what they do is they rearrange the links between the sockets, if you weren't aware. And the reason you'd want to farm all these zones is in the hopes, but likely this happens, that you'd get some very good items. Maybe just 1, but maybe 2. And what you do is you would invest your fusings in those items because the chance that you'd find upgrade to those items when you're doing maps is small. So you get primary skills in those items, and you effectively probably didn't waste those currencies. The other thing is you'd want to acquire maps. So right now you can get level 60 maps in most of Merciless, I believe, but if you're farming them, if you have an efficient route, if you're just going back and forth, your rate of killing mobs is very high, so your rate of getting drops, getting maps is also very high. So at the point where you have enough levels, enough gear, you've linked up all your gear that you wanted to use for the map content. Once you have like 2 or 3 maps, maybe more, you'd go ahead, finish the game, and start those maps. You can start the maps with some friends. That typically tends to work. In groups, you level a lot more efficiently in maps. But that's pretty much it. When it comes to the alpha, it's a little bit different because you hit this wall where the content becomes really hard, or where the level of the zone becomes much higher than your level a few times in. So pushing it all the way to the end, all in one go, is going to be very difficult, and you may have to stop at a certain point to try to do this. They've made this a little bit easier because I'm not going to show you guys right now, but in the alpha, certain side zones are much higher level than the rest of the zones. For instance, when you're going into Act 1 and when you're trying to do Tidal Island, which is the place where you fight Hellrake for one of the quests, the mobs in there, in Merciless Online right now, they're level 48. And the zone beside it also 48, so you guys can see that. I believe on Alpha that the zone is 58, and the zone beside it is 51 or 52 or something like that. So the optional quests, the quests that you don't really need to do to progress through the game, they occur in zones that are much, much higher level. And if your character can handle it, you can begin farming, you can begin getting some pretty nice items, so you can kind of finish the rest of the game based on your comfort level of where your character is compared to the content. But the idea in the end is the same. If you find a point where you need to farm, go ahead and do it. Find a really efficient way of doing it, but try to prolong that point as far as you can, because you don't want to really waste time farming for items in places where these items won't really compare to what you'd find in maps or later in the game, because you'd be wasting those currencies, and that's definitely something you don't want to do. So hopefully you've learned a few things, and maybe with these little tips here you can do a little better in some of the races. But as for the alpha, as for open beta when it comes out, we'll have to see what the most efficient thing is, but I don't think it'll be as clear, as obvious as like the Fell Shrine farming to map thing that's been going on right now. There's going to be a lot of variables to play with, and maybe we'll see what those are and get a good strategy down at that point. Till then, see you guys tomorrow.